Wes
Sure.
started his foray into music at age 2 on piano and eventually switched over to banjo in high school. He's played with Joy Kills Sorrow, the Bee Eaters, David Grisman, and currently tours with Molly Tuttle. He was also the banjo professor at Berklee College of Music in Boston for 4 years. Is that right? 4 years?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Why do we want Wes at Camp Tunefox? Wes is a master of taste and timing and has a deep knowledge of both traditional and modern bluegrass styles. He'll bring a fresh approach to learning and practicing music that comes from his time working at Berklee and studying on his own. At least that's why I'm excited to have you there and excited for you to share your expertise with people.
Nice.
So, Wes, before we get into the question, I would love you to play something for us. Do you have some?
Sure. Yeah. I'll give a little sneak peek off of a solo record I'm going to record at the end of May. This is a tune that I wrote for my grandmother.
Cool.
It's called Mary Evelyn.
That's beautiful, man.
Thanks.
Lovely. Yeah. So Camp Tunefox has daily themes. The first theme is chords and backup. The second day's theme is melody, and the third day's theme is improvisation and creativity. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the second day's theme, melody, and just to see if you could share your concepts around playing bluegrass vocal melodies in different places on the instrument, because that's a big thing with people.
Cool. Well, I think for me, there's maybe three main ways I think about it. One is interpreting melody through strict Scruggs style, which is basically involved in understanding that vernacular. So it's really about building up your vocabulary within that style and stringing licks together. I think one misconception that people have about Scruggs style, or maybe not a misconception, but something that players kind of earlier on in their path in Scruggs style, is they kind of get stuck just in what I think of as like first position, like from, up to the fifth fret, all these licks like in G, right? But there's kind of a whole other language of licks in other keys that are related to those licks. But it's all about kind of transcribing or finding tablature of like Earl playing in C and playing in D. Or like playing in open F, right? And learning those things. So that's one approach. It's honestly kind of the least linear of the three approaches. Another one that I think about that I tend to teach students a lot is one that's based out of like mostly forward and backward rolls. And it's something that I really strongly associate with Ron Block, but he wasn't the first person to play that way. There's actually a really amazing kind of unsung banjo player from the Pacific Northwest where I'm from. This guy that I only got to play with a couple times. His name is Harley Gray. And man, was he a fantastic banjo player. He played everything, all the melodies, like basically in the same style that Ron Block did with a different vibe. But he played in a band with his brother called the Gray Brothers.
Wow. Never heard of it.
So good. And that style Ron, I know, kind of came about it thinking about the instrument almost from like a unitar approach, which means like you're thinking about only playing melody on one string and using all the other strings, or particularly the first and the fifth strings as drone strings, right? So maybe the first foray into that would be to just play a scale, like a G scale, up and down the neck on the third string, and just in a forward roll. So the melody note's always going to be on your index finger. That kind of thing, right? You can do the same thing, exploring it on the other strings. Right? Patterns within that. But as of right now, we're actually like kind of playing in 3 as opposed to playing in 4, which is how a lot of the music typically is. And I wish I had a slightly better system for talking about this, but basically no one does it exactly the same, but you can catch a bunch of different rhythms by shifting back and forth between forward and backward rolls. Sometimes you also have to make the choice to just play a melody note and not think about it in rolls. Part of that is because if the melody notes are moving, if we're thinking of all of the roll notes as eighth notes as opposed to 16ths, which is sometimes notated that way, then if your melody note is a quarter note or faster, a lot of the time I'll just play those as melody notes as opposed to trying to roll, because you're just bouncing off of one string back and forth, and that sounds kind of not as exciting to me. It sounds a lot more predictable. So like if I was going to play You Are My Sunshine in this style, it would sound like this. So then a really great application of that is then, because we're just rolling off of the first and fifth strings, everything that I just played can also be shifted to the upper octave actually pretty easily. There's a bunch of different places you could do it. You could play it exactly the same way that I just played down in first position, but like emulating it here. But a lot of the time I'd probably tend to like stick to more of this middle zone of the banjo. So then this technique, one thing that it's really easily applied to is spiking your fifth string up to A and playing out of D position, right? And then one really useful thing about this is if you slap a capo on in this configuration, right, onto the second fret and then spike up to B here, then you have a great way of playing in E, or if you even tick that up one more time, then you have a great way of playing in F. So if we were going to play that same song, right? And the same thing goes for playing in C. So one choice you can make is to still leave it open, which is kind of a, I don't know, it's a choice, right? So you end up with a D note as one of your roll notes, which is kind of cool, actually. Another choice would be, and this ties into the next technique I'm going to talk about actually, is using harmonized scales to play melodies. So In the case of using this technique we've been talking about in the key of C, it may sound better to actually add another note on top, right? So you have the melody note on the second string for the most part, and then you're reinforcing it with a piece of whatever chord that melody is corresponding to. So right, that kind of thing. Which brings us into harmonized scales, which are kind of a banjo player's like best friend. This is something, if there's one thing that you learn past Scruggs style on the instrument, it should be harmonized scales in thirds and sixths, I'd say, in all the string sets. And the reason is because it kind of corresponds so beautifully with this thing that's right hand pattern, left hand shape, right? It's like, and the banjo is such a machine with that kind of thing. So if we were going to play like You Are My Sunshine, but in a different roll pattern, one that works really well with these harmonized scales, which, by the way, what that means is two notes of a scale running parallel to each other, right? So if we just took a little snippet of it, so this would be in thirds. So if we run from G up to a C, and then at the same time start on a B and run from B to E. If we play those in tandem, it sounds like this, right? So if we were going to play You Are My Sunshine, and one roll again that I like to use is, I think there's other names for it, but I call it the bounce roll, where you're bouncing off of an open string and then playing two notes at once with these two fingers. So it sounds like this. Let's see. Sorry. So you notice that over all of the G and C chords, I just stayed bouncing off an open G note. And when that 5 chord happened, the D chord, I started bouncing off of the open D string, right? And then this kind of technique maybe gets a little harder if you're playing in other keys that aren't G or some capo format thereof. But you can kind of fill in the blanks from there.
Totally, that is super cool, man. And it seems like beginners can grasp onto the beginning part of that, because you're just learning the scale and you're using that on the second or third string. So it's pretty accessible in the beginning, but then you kind of like, I liked how you took it through the motions and you kind of get into more advanced territory there at the end. That's awesome. I think you should take that to Camp Tunefox and teach something about that there.
Sure, happy to.
Yeah. So thanks, Wes, for joining me on this call. For those of you watching, Camp Tunefox is May 15th through 19th. There's some amazing teachers coming. Danny Barnes, Wes Corbett are teaching banjo. Joe Walsh and Mike Compton on mandolin, and Grant Gordy and Clay Hess on guitar. And yeah, it's going to be a really fun lineup. And details are on our website, www.tunefox.com/camp. So go check that out. Thanks again, Wes, and we'll see you in May.
Yeah, see you soon.